I've always been the dependable one in my family. My name's Ashley. At 37, I hold the position of senior marketing director at a tech firm. It's a solid job with decent pay, but I put in a lot of effort to reach this point. Unlike my younger siblings who seem to drift through life expecting support, I didn't think much when my parents invited me over for dinner. They bought their house about a decade ago and are still paying off the mortgage. It's a nice suburban place. Nothing extravagant, but cozy. I reside in my own small apartment downtown. It's not large, but it belongs to me. And I've been saving. For years with the hope of buying a house one day. I pulled into my parents' driveway behind my brother Mark's old Honda, and I noticed my sister Jen's Mazda was there too. Great. The whole family was gathered. I grabbed the wine I brought and went inside. Ashley, you made it! Mom greeted me with a hug that felt a bit too tight. She looked worn out, dark circles under her eyes. Everything okay, Mom? I asked as I handed her the wine. Oh, we'll talk at dinner. Your father's in the living room with your brother and sister. I found Dad in his recliner, looking like he'd aged a decade since I last saw him. Mark and Jen were on the couch, both glued to their phones. Hey, Dad, I said, leaning down to kiss his cheek. How's it going? Could be better, he replied with a faint smile. But we'll get into that. What's wrong? Are you sick? A knot of worry formed in my stomach. No, nothing like that. We'll talk about it over dinner. I turned to my siblings. Hey, guys. Mark looked up from his phone. Hey, sis. At 28, my brother still acted like a kid. He worked, occasionally as a bartender, but spent most of his time partying and dating a carousel of girlfriends. Jen, 30, gave me a quick smile before returning to her Instagram feed, scrolling, "Nice outfit, Target." She always managed to make compliments feel like slight. She worked at a salon but was always taking classes and switching career paths, never committing to anything. Mom called us to the dining room, and we took our usual places. Mom and Dad. At the ends, me on one side, Mark and Jen opposite. Mom had prepared pot roast, my favorite, which instantly made me suspicious. Something was definitely up. We made small talk while serving food, and I noticed my parents exchanging glances. Finally, after we all started eating, Dad cleared his throat. Kids, your mother and I need to discuss something. His tone was serious. Mom reached for his hand. We're facing some financial difficulties. What kind of difficulties? I asked, putting down my fork. Dad sighed. I lost my job last month due to budget cuts. And your mother, the doctor says I need to reduce my hours at the school. Mom added, having worked as an elementary school teacher for 30 years. My blood pressure's been too high, and standing all day is becoming tougher. So, what does this mean? Mark asked, still chewing. It means we're struggling to make our mortgage payments, Dad explained, and the utilities, everything, really. The table fell silent. Slowly, everyone's eyes turned to me. A chill ran down my spine as I understood what was happening. We hate to ask, Mom started, tears brimming in her eyes. But we're family. I've already been helping, I said cautiously. I've been sending you money for groceries. I covered the new refrigerator last year, and I helped with the bathroom renovation. I glanced at my siblings. And I've assisted both of you with rent when you needed it. Mark and Jen exchanged a look. Yeah, but Ash, Jen said, leaning in, you earn way more than us. And these are our parents we're talking about. You got that big promotion, Mark added. It's not like you need all that money. I sat there, stunned. So, you're suggesting I should take on their mortgage payments? While you two do what exactly? Dad looked down at his plate. We're not asking forever, honey. Just until I can find another job. We wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate. Mom chimed in. I looked around the table at their hopeful faces. My siblings, whom I'd already bailed out numerous times. My parents, whom I loved despite everything. I knew I should hold my ground. But the words that came out were, okay, I'll help. Relief washed over their faces instantly. The tension in the room lifted as if I'd waved a magic wand. Mom's eyes brightened, and Dad sat up straighter, in his chair. I knew we could rely on you, Ashley, Mom said, squeezing my hand across the table. You've always been our rock. After that, the conversation shifted to lighter subjects. Dad cracked jokes, Jen talked about a celebrity who visited her salon, and Mark bragged about some girl he was dating. But I hardly heard them. My mind was busy recalibrating my budget, watching my dream of owning a home slip further away. As I drove back to my apartment that night, I set up the recurring mortgage payment in my banking app. Family comes first, I told myself, even when they took me for granted. The weeks after that dinner changed everything. What began as just the mortgage payment quickly turned into a flood of requests. My phone buzzed with a constant stream of financial emergencies from my family. Mom needed cash for groceries. Dad's car required repairs. The water heater broke. Property taxes were due. Each time I sent money without protest, convincing myself it was temporary, that things would improve once Dad found a new job. But as weeks morphed into months, there was always a new crisis, a new cost. One Tuesday morning in early spring, my phone chirped with a text from Jen. Need $2,000 for cosmetology certification. Job requires it. Can you help? I stared at the screen, quickly calculating in my head. I had already sent my parents $100 for the mortgage that month, plus another $450 for utilities. Last week, I gave Mark $800 to fix his car's transmission. My savings account was dwindling faster than I could replenish it. I sighed and replied, "I'll transfer it today." Her response came swiftly. "You're the best. I'll pay you back someday." We both knew she wouldn't. I opened my banking app and made the transfer, then pulled up my budget spreadsheet. The numbers were grim. At this rate, my aspiration of buying a house would remain just that, a dream. The money I'd saved for years was now acting as my family's personal emergency fund. But family comes first, I reminded myself, even if they didn't value it. My birthday arrived in late April, 37. I hadn't organized anything special, just a quiet evening at home with takeout and wine. I invited my family over, not expecting much, but hoping for at least a small celebration. Mom and Dad came empty-handed. "Sorry, honey, no gift this year," Mom said as she kissed my cheek. "You know how things are. We didn't want to give you something cheap." I swallowed my disappointment. "No problem. I'm just glad. You're here." Dad patted my shoulder and went straight to my fridge to grab a beer. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. It was Mark with a woman I'd never seen before. "Happy birthday, sis," he said, handing me a small package wrapped in newspaper. "This is Tiffany." The woman gave me a quick wave. "Nice place." I unwrapped Mark's gift, a keychain with a plastic cupcake dangling from it. The price tag was still attached, $4.99. "Thanks," I said, forcing a smile. "Do you have any food?" Mark asked, already heading toward my kitchen. "We're starving." I watched as he loaded 2 plates with the pasta I'd ordered, then packed up a 3rd container with leftovers. "We've got to run," he announced after they ate. "Tiffany's friend is having a thing. Can we take this?" He held up the container of food. Before I could respond, they were out the door. "Thanks for the food. Later." And they were gone. My phone pinged with a text from Jen. "So sorry, can't make it tonight? Have a date. Happy birthday." I poured myself another glass of wine and sat down with my parents, who spent the next hour lamenting their financial woes. "The insurance went up again, Dad. And we need a new washer," Mom added. "Ours is making that awful noise again." I nodded, letting their hints wash over me without response. I'd given enough this month. When they finally left, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by empty takeout containers and dirty wine glasses. What a birthday. 2 more months dragged by. My bank account continued to diminish while my resentment grew. Then came the announcement. Mom and Dad were planning their 40th wedding anniversary celebration and wanted to do something special. They needed $5,000 for a venue and catering. I wanted to refuse. I should have refused. But when Mom called with that pleading tone about how they'd never had a proper celebration for any of their anniversaries, I relented. The day of the anniversary party came. The venue was beautiful, an event space downtown adorned with elegant decorations and a catered buffet. I recognized faces from my childhood, aunts, uncles, cousins, my parents' old neighbors and friends. Everyone was dressed in their finest, champagne glasses clinking as they celebrated my parents' 40 years together. I mingled with relatives I hadn't seen in years, answering the usual questions about my job and love life. "No, boyfriend. Yes, still at the same company. No kids yet." The conversation always ended with a pitying smile and well, there's still time. When it was time for speeches, everyone gathered around my parents. Dad's sister gave a heartfelt tribute to their enduring love. An old friend shared funny stories from their early years together. Then it was my turn. I kept it brief, congratulating them on 40 years and wishing them many more. They smiled politely and thanked me before directing their attention back to my siblings. During their response speech, my parents gushed about how proud they were of their children. They spoke at length about Mark's entrepreneurial spirit and Jen's artistic talent. I received a single mention: Ashley, always so responsible. I forced a smile, ignoring the sting. I paid for this entire celebration, and I was barely an afterthought. Just as dessert was served, my phone rang. It was my boss. I excused myself and stepped outside to take the call. There was an issue with a client presentation that needed immediate attention. After the call, I returned inside but paused in the hallway outside the main room to check my reflection in a mirror. That's when I overheard them. My mother's voice and Aunt Linda's coming from around the corner. "I noticed you didn't say much about Ashley in your speech," Aunt Linda said. I froze, my hand still on my compact mirror. Mom laughed softly. "Well, between us, Ashley's just a purse for us now. She always gives money whenever we ask." The words hit me like a physical blow. I pressed myself against the wall, heart racing. "If she wasn't helping with the mortgage and everything else," Mom continued, "we probably wouldn't even keep in touch. She's always been difficult, not like Mark and Jen." "It must be hard," Aunt Linda said sympathetically, "having to pretend you care about a child you don't love." I stood frozen in the hallway, my mother's words echoing in my mind. Ashley's just a purse for us now. My own mother had just confessed she didn't love me, that she only kept in contact because of my financial support. Everything I believed about my family was crumbling. "Have you and Robert updated your will lately?" Aunt Linda asked, changing the subject. "We did it last year," Mom replied casually. "The house and everything else will be divided between Mark and Jen." "Ashley's not included." I pressed my hand against my mouth to stifle a gasp. Not only did they see me as an ATM, but they'd also intentionally cut me out of their will after I'd been paying their mortgage. The house I was helping them keep would never be mine. I heard them moving, heading back to the party. I slipped into the restroom to avoid them, locking myself in a stall until I could breathe normally. Again, my hands trembled as I checked my reflection in the mirror. Somehow, I looked the same. How could I look the same when everything had changed? I returned to the party, moving like a ghost through the crowd. No one noticed when I gathered my purse and jacket. No one saw me slip out the door. I drove home in a daze, my mind replaying my mother's words over and over. At home, I poured myself a large glass of wine and opened my banking app. With clinical detachment, I scrolled through months of transactions, tallying everything I'd given my family, the mortgage payments, the utilities, the loans to my siblings that were never repaid, the anniversary party. The total was staggering, nearly $30,000 in just a few months. And for what? To buy the affection of people who didn't even like me. With a decisive tap, I canceled the scheduled mortgage payment. Then I went to bed, feeling strangely calm. For the first time in months, I slept soundly without waking to check my phone for family emergencies. The following week passed in eerie silence. No calls from my parents, no texts from my siblings pleading for money. They hadn't even noticed. I'd left the party early. They didn't care enough to check if I was okay. Exactly 7 days after the anniversary, my phone rang. My mother's name appeared on the screen. "Ashley." Her voice trembled with panic. "The bank just called us. They said the mortgage payment didn't go through. Did you forget to send it?" "No." "Hello?" "No." "How are you?" Just straight to the money. "I didn't forget," I replied calmly. I canceled it. Silence hung in the air. "What do you mean you canceled it? Why would you do that?" "I'm not paying your mortgage anymore, Mom. I'm not giving any of you money ever again." "Have you lost your mind?" Her voice escalated. "What's gotten into you?" "I heard you at the party," I said, my voice steady despite the anger burning inside me. "I heard what you said to Aunt Linda, that I'm just a purse to you, that you don't even love me." "You misunderstood," she stammered. "I didn't mean—" "And I heard about the will," I continued. "How you're leaving everything to Mark and Jen. Nothing to me, even though I'm the one paying to keep your house." "You're overreacting," she said, her tone shifting from panic to condescension. Family helps family. That's what we do. No, that's what I do. Mark and Jen don't help. You and Dad don't help. I'm the only one giving. And I'm done. I hung up and immediately turned off my phone. When I turned it back on hours later, there were dozens of missed calls and messages. Mom, Dad, Mark, Jen, all suddenly very eager to talk to me. I skimmed the texts. They all essentially said the same thing. I was being selfish. I was overreacting. I had money to spare, so why wouldn't I help? They were struggling while I lived comfortably. I owed them. I blocked their numbers. For 3 blissful days, I found peace. Then, on Saturday morning, a pounding at my apartment door jolted me awake. I peeked through the peephole and saw them all. Mom, Dad, Mark, and Jen. Ashley, we know you're in there, Dad called through the door. Open up. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to any of you, I replied firmly from the other side of the locked door. Please leave. We had to borrow money to make this month's payment, Mom cried, her voice cracking. We could lose the house. My health isn't good, Dad added. Do you want us to be homeless? Why don't Mark and Jen help? I asked. They're getting the house in your will, after all. How can you be so selfish? Jen shouted. You're just a bitter old maid with nowhere to spend your money anyway. Her words stung, but they also confirmed everything I already knew. I was nothing to them but a bank account. Leave now, or I'm calling the police, I said firmly. If you don't leave in the next 60 seconds, I'm dialing 911. I heard muttered curses, then footsteps retreating. From my window, I watched them get into Dad's car and drive away. I thought that would be the end of it, but they weren't finished yet. Calls began pouring in from other relatives. Cousins, aunts, uncles, all with the same message. Family is above all. You should help your parents. How could you be so cruel? I stopped answering calls from unfamiliar numbers. I blocked emails and set all my social media to private. Slowly, the siege began to lift. Through mutual friends, I learned that Mark and Jen had moved back to our parents' house to help with the mortgage. They were all struggling to adapt to their new financial reality. No more high-end boutiques for Jen. No more partying for Mark. They had to rely on themselves now, not on me. Meanwhile, I worked on rebuilding my savings. My dream of owning a home was back on track without my family's constant drain. I was amazed at how quickly my account grew. I started looking at real estate listings again, and even scheduled a few viewings. One evening, while browsing houses online, I received a text from an unknown number. It's Mom. Please call me. We need to talk. We miss you. I blocked the number without replying and went back to scrolling through photos of houses that might someday be mine. Homes where I wouldn't have to open the door to people who viewed me as nothing but a means to an end. 3 months went by without contact from my family. I settled into a peaceful routine, focusing on my career and myself for the first time in years. I started therapy, trying to understand why I had allowed my family to use me for so long. My therapist helped me realize that I had been buying their love with money, hoping that if I gave enough, they'd finally value me as they did Mark and Jen. But their love had never been for sale because they had never intended to sell it to me. By month 4, I made a significant decision. I put my apartment on the market, and it sold quickly for a good price. Between the sale proceeds and my revitalized savings, I had enough to make a serious offer on a lovely house in a great neighborhood. It featured a cozy backyard with mature trees and space for the garden I had always wanted. Not the mansion of my dreams, but something even better. A real home that would be entirely mine, purchased with money I had earned and saved without, sacrificing my dignity. The morning after my offer was accepted, my phone rang with yet another unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Ashley, it was my father's voice, softer than I had heard it in years. Please don't hang up. What do you want, Dad? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. We're having a really hard time, he said. Your mother and I, the bank is threatening foreclosure. Mark and Jen are trying, but they can't cover it all. I'm sorry to hear that, I said sincerely. Despite everything, I didn't want them to suffer, but I added, I can't help anymore. We made a mistake, he admitted. Your mother and I have been talking. We've changed our will. The house will be split 3 ways now, equal shares for all our children. And there it was, not an apology, but a bribe. They weren't truly sorry for how they treated me. They were just offering me a share of a house that might be foreclosed on anyway in exchange for my continued financial support. "That's not why I stopped helping, Dad," I said quietly. It was never about the will. It was about being taken for granted. It was about Mom saying she doesn't even love me, that I'm just a wallet to all of you. "She was upset that day," he protested weakly. "She didn't mean it." "She sounded pretty clear to me," I replied, "and none of you have apologized. You're only calling because you need money again." The silence confirmed my suspicion. "I have to go, Dad. I just bought a house. My house. I hope things work out for you all." I hung up and blocked his number. The attempts to contact me continued, growing more desperate as their financial situation worsened. They sent messages through coworkers, neighbors, and even had someone slip a note under my door. Each time the focus was on what they needed from me, what I could give them, never on how they had hurt me or how they could make amends. Through mutual friends, I learned they had to take out a second mortgage to avoid foreclosure. Mark had finally secured a full-time job at a warehouse. Jen had given up on cosmetology school and was working as a receptionist. My parents had sold their second car and were cutting expenses wherever they could. I felt a complicated mix of emotions: sadness that they were struggling, satisfaction that they were finally facing reality, guilt for not helping, and relief that I had broken free from their manipulation. But mostly, I felt proud of myself for standing my ground. 6 months after cutting ties, I moved into my new house. It wasn't enormous, but it was in a pleasant neighborhood with good sidewalks and friendly neighbors. Every inch was mine, paid for with money I had earned and saved without sacrificing my self-respect. I painted the walls my favorite colors, bought furniture I loved, and planted flowers in my cozy backyard, creating the sanctuary I had always dreamed of having. As I was unpacking in my new home, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find a delivery person with a large envelope. Inside was a formal invitation to my cousin Emma's wedding, along with a handwritten note. "I know things are tough with the family right now, but I'd love to have you there. No pressure." I had always been close to Emma. She was one of the few relatives who hadn't taken sides in the family drama. That evening, I called her. "Thanks for the invitation," I said. "I'm not sure if I should come. Will my parents be there?" "Of course they will," she said honestly. "But this is my day, and I want you there. I can seat you far away from them. Will they try to corner me? I can't handle another ambush. I've made it clear to everyone. No family drama at my wedding. If anyone tries anything, my fiancé's brothers will escort them out." She added that last part with a laugh. I considered it. Maybe it was time to reclaim my place in the extended family on my terms. "I'll be there," I decided. The wedding was beautiful. True to her word, Emma seated me at a table with old school friends from my immediate family. I caught glimpses of my parents throughout the evening, Mom and Dad looking older and more subdued, Mark in a suit that seemed a size too large, and Jen without her usual designer accessories. During the reception, I stepped outside for some fresh air and unexpectedly came face to face with my mother. "Ashley," she said, clearly surprised. "You look well." "Thanks," I replied. "You too." An awkward silence stretched between us. "I heard you bought a house," she finally said. "Yes, I sold my apartment and bought a lovely place with a backyard. It's perfect for me." She nodded, looking down at her hands. "We're doing better now. Mark got promoted. Jen's going back to school. Something practical this time." "I'm glad," I said, and I genuinely meant it. "We miss you," she said, her voice small. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the manipulative mother who'd called me a purse, but an aging woman who'd made terrible choices and was now living with the consequences. "I miss who I thought you all were," I admitted, "but I don't miss being used." She flinched but didn't argue. As I turned to go back inside, she called after me, "Will you ever forgive us?" I paused, considering her question. "Maybe someday," I said, "but not today." Walking back to the reception, I felt lighter somehow. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need to buy their love. I was building my own life on my own terms. And that was something worth celebrating